The James Show Podcast.
For my fellow Texans, happy Juneteenth. And I'm specific to fellow Texans because this is a Texan holiday. And while I like people, trying to be like us, and I realize everyone's jealous of how awesome Texas is, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, the way this holiday is being misrepresented. And my next guest wrote a great article. He just put it on X, and it kind of does a better job of spelling out the way I feel. His name is Amuse on Twitter /X, whatever we're calling it these days. And he's kind of a mystery to me. This is a guy I started following because like 20 of my other friends have been retweeting this guy. And so then I started following him. Now I'm a fan. And welcome to the show, Amuse. Are you with me? I don't think he can hear us. He can't hear us. All right. All right, fine. We'll call him on the phone. But the situation around Juneteenth for transplants, and I guess younger people aren't familiar, but look, even out in Bug Tussle, this was something that we learned in our Texas history class. In fact, we learned it in regular history class. It was just part of being a good Texan kid, is we had this special holiday, Juneteenth, and we all thought it was cool because there's a few things that you get to celebrate being from Texas, being a Texan, that you don't get to celebrate if you're from Missouri. They don't have, remember the Alamo in Vermont. They don't have they didn't have a Juneteenth in Kansas. So it was kind of cool in that way. Now there's a little bit of lore and sort of fiction and misinformation surrounding it. But we all kind of agreed the general purpose of Juneteenth, celebrating the end of slavery here in the Lone Star State, is a monument worth recognizing. And it's sort of a lot of people feel, myself included, that it's really the culmination of the promises that were set out in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Because the abolitionists constantly referred to the founding fathers to make their case for abolition, for the abolishment of slavery. And they quoted these guys over and over and over. They quoted the founding fathers. They quoted the Declaration of Independence. And so I feel like when we finally had the Civil War and we finally got past that 13th, 14th Amendment, that is when that promise was actually fulfilled for all Americans. And then we didn't give women the right to vote until 1920. But let's not get too much in the weeds here, because we've also noticed that starting about, 5 years ago, Juneteenth started to be talked about on a national level. And Juneteenth started to be representative of things that just weren't true. And I got to tell you, it really, really rubs me the wrong way about the misinformation around what used to be our personal, specific, adored holiday, Juneteenth, now that it feels like it's being exploited for national purpose. Now, Amuse, let's deal with the two big misconceptions about Juneteenth. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Hey, it's working. Good job, Garrett, for fixing it. But
yeah, thank you.
Okay, so
thank you, Garrett. Thank you for having me on.
All right, first misconception is the idea that no one in Texas or the slaves in Texas didn't know about the Emancipation Proclamation, didn't know that slavery had been ended, didn't know they were freed until some guy showed up in Galveston. So that is mistruth number one. Explain that one, Amuse.
Yeah, the story is that General Gordon Granger, arrived in Galveston and read General Order Number 3 from a balcony, and that's when the slaves learned that they were actually free. Well, Galveston was one of the busiest ports in the world at the time, and it's where all the information came in for everything that was happening around the globe. These folks on this small little island, there were about 2,000 slaves there, and their owners and themselves maybe all saw newspapers. And then subsequent reports after, many years later, academic reports were that the slaves would talk about, former slaves would talk about how they completely knew everything. I mean, they knew what everybody was, who was sleeping with who was doing what. They were very much aware that the Emancipation Proclamation happened, the war ended, and they were going to be freed.
And you had mentioned in your article that there's even newspapers that had mentioned the end of slavery, printed in Houston. So we know the people of Texas knew that slavery had ended before June 19th, 1965. The other big misconception, and the way it's being portrayed on a national level, is they act like, well, for America as a whole, we should all celebrate this because this is the official end of slavery. Also not true.
That was the worst. I think that's the worst lie of the whole holiday. I mean, there were more than 250,000 people held in slavery on that date and until December 6th. So for the next 6 months, in 2 Union states, 250,000 slaves were held. So that wasn't the end of slavery in the United States. The end of slavery was December 6th. So we want to celebrate a day. It's either let's celebrate Emancipation Proclamation or let's celebrate December 6th. But June 19th is the date of a speech by a Union general in an island where everyone knew everything. I mean, in fact, most of Texas knew that the emancipation happened and the war ended after the people of Galveston did and after the slaves of Galveston. They knew everything in advance. A port city, I mean, this is before, telephones. A port city is where you got the news first. And that's kind of how they knew what was going on.
So let's talk about what is with this push to mutate and stretch our holiday into something that's not for national purposes.
Well, the reason I wrote the op-ed was because I don't remember celebrating this holiday. I grew up, in the Houston area near Galveston. I actually grew up near NASA, and we never celebrated Juneteenth. And I went back.
Okay, now I'm
start out.
Sorry to interrupt.
Basically, it was a push by kind of people we would think of as cultural Marxists, and they really wanted to, undermine the idea that July 4th was the founding of our nation. And they want to push that narrative that we saw covered in the New York Times's 1619 Project, which is, Americans' founding actually began with the slaves. And really, it's a narrative that America was, ill founded and we're completely corrupt and we shouldn't celebrate our nation. In fact, we should apologize for our nation.
Yeah, and so this feels like the sort of 1619 Project version of what they think a holiday should be. Now, I got to counter you on something there, Amuse. I'm from Texas. Now, I'm from a small town. We always learned about Juneteenth, especially in Texas history class. We did a deep dive on it, but we always were told about it in regular history class, and it was actually a part of our public school curriculum out in the middle of nowhere. I must just be a little bit older than you. Is there like an age gap issue? Because Garrett, my producer, who grew up, aren't you like from the Fort Worth area? So maybe, is this a big city versus rural school district thing, or is this an age difference? Because he's in his 20s and I'm in my 40s.
Okay, well, I'm in my 50s.
Okay, that doesn't explain it then. Well, that's weird. So how did some people get this? And we heard about it every single year, and there are other Texans who didn't. That changes the story in my mind a little bit.
Well, I'm not saying that I had never heard of Juneteenth, but I just never heard of it as, I had heard the myth. The myth was that there were people in Galveston who on Juneteenth, 1965, the 19th of June, that was the first time they knew they were freed because they were completely in the dark. And I'd heard that myth but I didn't think of this as a holiday. I didn't think it was something that was celebrated. I just never felt like it was this thing as it is now. Now it's a real thing.
All right. Amuse, conservative commentator. I appreciate you hanging out on the James Show. You need to be a regular and retweet some of my stuff. You got a lot more followers than me. I could use the help.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Thanks, Garrett, for fixing my audio. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, find him on Twitter, X. He's a great follow, @Amuse. It's like the word amuse, but it's AMUSE. Fantastic stuff. And he doesn't just retweet and write little 144-character messages. He writes full-on articles that are researched in depth and have all kinds of details in them, far beyond what you see in a normal tweet /X or whatever the cool kids are calling it these days. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, the comic strip about, office and hijinks and politics and awkwardness. He's dying, actually. He has the same cancer Joe Biden has, stage 28 or whatever it is, prostate cancer that has metastasized into his bones. And literally the same cancer Biden has. And so he knows. He says, I'll probably be checking out sometime this summer. But he has just been laying down some excellent little videos on Twitter /X, whatever we're calling it. And in this one, he's making the case that Trump derangement syndrome deserves to be a real mental disorder. And so what does that mean, a real mental disorder? Well, they want it put in the DSM-5. This is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. This is the mental disorder manual, which kind of makes it official in the world of psychiatry and psychology. So while you and I may just as laymen diagnose people with Trump derangement syndrome. This takes it a step further and would make it an official mental disorder. But here he is, Scott Adams, making a case.
I would argue that we should see it as a mental disorder and that the elderly are just more prone to it, just like Alzheimer's and other stuff. And I saw a post by Meg Brock, who was asking the question on X, when is Trump derangement syndrome going to be officially added to the DSM-5 to make it an official diagnosis? And so I went to Grok to find out, is it already in the literature? And then Grok says it lacks defined symptoms, diagnostic criteria, or empirical evidence required for a legitimate disorder. To which I say, isn't it a lot like addiction? If I said to you, you have a drinking problem, how would you define it as a problem versus a hobby? And the answer is usually if it interferes with your life. So if your drinking has an impact on your life, as in you lose your job, you lose your relationships, you spend all your money, you wake up in a ditch, well, then you've got a drinking problem. If you had 2 drinks on the weekend with your friends and then took a Uber home, we would mostly say you're just somebody who has a hobby and you don't have a problem. But don't you think TDS is exactly like that? If somebody simply prefers a Democrat over Trump, I would say, oh, well, that's just a political preference. But if somebody is crying and shaking and they feel like he's going to become a king and he's going to lock people up in prison camps, isn't that interfering with your actual life and happiness? And wouldn't that be super easy to diagnose if you were a therapist? You could just say, does it affect your life? Do you wake up in the morning shaking and crying? If the answer is yes, then you've got a mental health disorder. I feel like that really needs to be a legitimate mental health disorder. It would help.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because I think he's absolutely right. And there's sort of the layman definition of addiction, or, some sort of issue that you have with chemical substances. Because I have a drink. Sometimes Miss Parker has a drink, but never have we, ran our car into the ditch or hit an Astro van by running a red light on the way home at 2 a.m. The lack of negative consequences kind of lets us know that we don't have a problem. However, continued usage in the face of negative consequences is sort of the everyman's definition of what an addiction is. A disorder is a mental problem, a mental condition is. And so all you have to do is, okay, you can hate Trump, and that's fine. You're not a mental person. You don't have a disorder. But if you are visited upon with negative consequences in your life, you have to start rethinking that. That's no longer the case that you are just a hobbyist who doesn't like Donald Trump versus your hatred of Donald Trump or your irrational fear of Donald Trump is having a negative impact on your life. Let me give you an example. Just this weekend, we had a No Kings protester. The big No Kings march over the weekend. This is what I'm talking about. This counts in my book as a mental disorder.
I'm just so scared. I'm 74 years old. I worry about everything, and I just am so scared and upset, and I don't understand why people voted for this person.
That's a level of paranoia that's not healthy. You're scared to just go outside. You're scared to live in this. You're crying in the middle of the street on a Saturday. You're so scared. Lady, you have a problem. Now, the problem isn't with Trump. It's with this lady and one part, but the other part is the people that are filling her head with all this stuff that activates that sensitivity, that disorder, that paranoia, really. Because if you think like guys are coming after you with guns and so you don't want to leave your house, unless there's actually guys that are coming after you with guns, you're crazy. You're imagining it. And you're disrupting your way of life. You're disrupting your other, you'd probably be a happier person. You wouldn't be crying in the street if not for this belief in something that's not real. If you think there's a unicorn in your front yard, people understand you're crazy because that's not real. And it should be the same way. If you think Trump is literally Hitler, you're certifiably crazy because that is so not real and demonstrably disprovable. Trump derangement syndrome. Is it a real disease? Is it a real disorder? Does it deserve to be in the handbook? Now, I would say it, yes. However, I'm going to add a tweak to it in the next segment because I don't want this to end with Trump. You've been seeing this your entire life. People talking about Reagan and Bush and everyone else like this. It's not just Trump, but we'll get into this more. I want to hear your thoughts. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey, homeowners, when's the last time you had your roof checked out? For a lot of you, it's never. Well, that's unacceptable. How long's your roof been up there? Unless you just got it recently, your roof is on its way out. You know, roofs have a time limit. And I remember when I was selling my house, one of the first things they were asking, how old's your roof? Because if it's more than 20 years old, you probably need to get it replaced. Oh, really? So they just expect it to run out? Yes. It's like a pair of shoes. It's like brake pads. Your roof is going to run out. And the trick is to catch it as soon as you can to prevent some bigger disaster from happening from a compromised roof. So here's what you do. You call my friends at Blue Ribbon Roofing, James Parker here. I had them come out and inspect my roof, got up there, took a bunch of pictures, took about 40 minutes, maybe an hour tops if you have a bigger house than me. But it didn't cost me anything. And I got to find out that my roof is fine. I had a little board that needs to be replaced in the gables. It's going to cost a few bucks. It's not really that big of a deal, but at least I know. And I have a bunch of pictures and I have a baseline. So if another hailstorm comes through or some big tornado happens or some other storm actually damages the roof, it'll be easy as pie to get the file claimed with the insurance company because we can show, hey, Blue Ribbon Roofing came out to my house in June of 2025. Here's all the pictures. See how it was good then and it's messed up now? Clearly it was this storm. Now give me my money. And if you do need a new roof, they can help you deal with the insurance company because for a lot of people, they do not enjoy that part of the process. They can be kind of a pain, the insurance company, and Blue Ribbon Roofing is just better at dealing with them. So let them do all the heavy lifting in both getting it paid for and getting the roof. And it starts by going to blueribbondfw.com. Go to blueribbondfw.com. Making the case that Trump derangement syndrome needs to be in the DSM-5. It needs to be classified as a legit mental disorder. Do you agree? 800-288-9227. Now, I gave you an example of some lady who was crying. I'm just scared. This was the No Kings. I didn't go like cherry pick this. You can find this pretty much any weekend at any protest. There's a few of these.
I'm just so scared.
So what is she scared of exactly? She's 74. What does she think is going to happen? Is she an illegal immigrant that's about to get deported? I doubt it. So she didn't go get this fear on her own. This fear was put in her head probably by the mediums. I know you're supposed to say media for plural mediums, but I'm going to say mediums. From the mediums that she has chosen who have fed her a steady diet of scaremongering, hyperbolic, Trump is literally Hitler narrative. For 10 years now, we've been having these people just fed just the scariest, worst things. They want to oppress minorities. He wants to oppress all immigrants. He hates all immigrants. He wants to erase black people. And it's like, James, you don't have to be in hyperbole as well. You turn into just as bad as them when you exaggerate the things they say. No, I'm not exaggerating. Hey, look, this is the Brandon Johnson, Mayor of Chicago, saying we want to eliminate black people. Really? Is this what we want to do?
They wanted to create division, but we're not going to allow that to happen in the city of Chicago. Much like we fought for civil rights 60 years ago, we're going to continue to make sure that whether you are black, brown, Asian, white, young, old, working people deserve to be prioritized. And this misnomer that there's division, and consternation within communities solely based on this issue is just wrong. He's working to eliminate black history. He is trying to eliminate black existence from this country. Jesus. But he's also attacking the LGBT.
Right, you just cut it off right there. He's working to eliminate black existence from this country. You know, you can say these hyperbolic things, and I know that you know you're lying when you say them, but the reason you say it is because it works, because people like the I'm scared lady will believe you and will act accordingly. And you have a whole bunch of people there who are willing to overlook all kinds of just crazy atrocities that the government is doing as long as they are anti-Donald Trump, as long as they are fighting literally Hitler. You had 70-something million people go out and vote for a guy who has mashed potatoes for brains 6 months ago because they were so scared of literally Hitler. And they've exploited these people who are just weak-minded. You know, the Jedi mind trick, you know, these are not the droids you're looking for. And he's like, these are not the droids we're looking for. Move along. Move it along. These are the weak-minded people that they watch MSNBC and they go, oh, he wants to eliminate black people, black existence. Well, I'm not in favor of that. I'm not a racist, evil, literally Hitler. This is scary stuff. But it's taken just 10 years of just a constant drumbeat. Now, you probably know this if you're my age or older, but younger people, you don't understand how bad the media talked about Ronald Reagan in real time. Now, I don't know about before that. I don't know if they were running around saying Nixon's literally Hitler, but I do remember firsthand how Reagan was literally Hitler. Reagan was the worst thing in the world. Look, I can do the Bill Hicks Reagan rant. So here's my caveat. I think Trump derangement syndrome does need to be in the books as a legit mental condition. It's a disorder for sure. But I don't think it's limited to Trump. I think this is the danger in calling it Trump derangement syndrome is the fact that when Trump's long gone, the next Republican candidate for president also going to be literally Hitler. The one 4 or 8 years after that also going to be literally Hitler. It never ends. And if you just, for those of you who are younger than me and weren't cognizant or even born yet during the Reagan era, Garrett, listen to this. This was one of the biggest comedians in America at the time, Bill Hicks, a Texan, by the way, going on a rant on Ronald Reagan. And this is how they talk about every Republican president.
Why is it always good guys are murdered? John Lennon murdered, John Kennedy murdered. Why is it good guys are murdered? Mediocre hacks live on forever. Martin Luther King murdered. Gandhi murdered. Jesus murdered. Reagan shot, wounded, cancer 8 times. That still walks. This guy's like Jason at this point, man. I'm back. Wait to see him in a hockey match. Any speech now? Well, you shot me. I'm back. Cancer on my nose. I'm back. Cancer in my ass. I'm back. My God, what's it gonna take? A syringe of AIDS shot in your eyeball? I'll do it. A Trident missile shot up your fascist, evil, mean-spirited, corporate puppet, devil. Where's the button? Ronald, 6 letters. Wilson, 6 letters. Reagan, 6 letters. Pretty frightening coincidence there, huh?
Yes, he's the Antichrist. Ha ha ha. That's hilarious. However, weak-minded people like, oh, that's so scary. And I don't want to hear this goes both ways arguments. Yes, there are people who got too concerned about Barack Obama and probably let it ruin their mental well-being. But we don't have the same problem going the other way. Show me the mainstream comedian that was making a big case about Obama being literally Hitler, being literally the Antichrist. Can you find one that's as big as Bill Hicks? Can you find every single night talk show, like The Tonight Show, The Late Show, Fallon, Kimmel, Colbert, Tomlinson when she was doing it, that were all just geared up against them? Pat. Hey, Pat and McKinney, you're on WBAP.
Yes, it's a derangement syndrome, and Elon Musk is getting the worst of it. J.D. Vance is getting the worst of it. There's some real nuts that don't understand what's going on in the real world. And on top of that, they listen to the same lamestream news. They wouldn't listen to Fox News or Newsmax to save their life.
Well, I would also like credit on this side of the aisle, Pat from McKinney, because we don't do that. I did not get on. You cannot. Pardon?
There was a girl at my window.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
So go through the James Show archives and see if where I called Joe Biden literally Hitler. Go through the James Show archives and see where I called Obama literally Hitler, or literally the Antichrist, or literally the devil, or he wants to erase all white people or anything. It doesn't go both ways. We don't do the hyperbolic thing. They call us Nazis or racist or sexist or bigots, or we want to control women's bodies. We want to genocide the Palestinians. What's the worst thing we say about them? They're crazy. They're socialist, which is kind of true.
You're right.
All right. Well, good. I'm glad you agree. A couple of the funnier feedbacks I've gotten. Who wrote this? Robert in Facebook said, I can confirm that as my wife's friend is wanting to move to Canada because her rights are being taken away. She just got her property put up for sale, and when it sells, she's moving to Canada. Well, for one thing, good. Get the hell out of here. But this is what I'm talking about. If you believe in a threat that is non-existent and you are making actions that have negative consequences in the real world, in your real life, that's kind of the definition of a mental disorder. Yeah, she actually has derangement syndrome. No doubt about that. Let's see. This is James, not me, another one. This says, I know too many people who I'd known for years, but for some reason they've gone completely irrational when it comes to anything Trump does. TDS boggles the mind. Now, that's a great sign. Whenever you leave the rationality of the real world, and you're like, well, we've got to protest against kings. Well, no one's a king. Well, we got to protest against Nazis. Well, no one around you. Half the country isn't Nazis. Well, they're genociding the Palestinians. No, they're not. Well, Hunter's laptop is disinformation. So stop. You're a crazy person. You believe so much stuff that isn't true. Amy writes over here on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it. That lady that's crying at 70 on TV is someone who needs to turn the TV off. This is legacy media's fault. They have people terrified over nothing. TDS is real, and add cognitive dissonance to that. Mind-boggling to me that grown people have zero discernment. Yeah, well, there's some people who just never were taught to be critical thinkers. I guess it comes naturally to others, but they never had a chance to begin with. And legacy media didn't create the crazy people. The crazy people already exist. They're just inserting themselves and exploiting that for political purposes with all this untrue rhetoric. When you wonder why the news lies all the time, constantly, about everything Trump or political, because it works on a lot of people. This is James in Arlington on the phone. Hey, James, you're on WBAP. Go.
Hey, James. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the 74-year-old woman. You know, a lot of this, it can't be anything but orchestrated across the country. So I think that there are people that are probably being paid, and those people are thespians, or some of them are actors, and that's what it sounds like this lady was.
Oh, you think she's faking it?
Beyond the pale.
Man, I hope she's faking it, but I really believe that there are a lot of people who are just on the cusp of paranoia like that. And look, paranoia, it's not paranoid if people really are out to get you. But if you're worried about, oh, my rights are being taken away, what? Abortion? That's about it? You don't have to move to Canada for that. And then there was an email I got from Russell, and thank you very much for your call, James in Arlington. Russell wrote in, he said, what about people who are concerned about the Democrats and their policy lies and detrimental effects on our country? Is that going to become a mental disorder as well? Well, if they're believing true things and they're acting on true, real information, then it's not really a disorder. You're just believing the truth. You know, there are some things that you should be worried about. If there's a car coming at you, you should be worried. Think, hey, I may need to get out of the street. But it's not beyond me to admit that there are probably people who were so concerned about Obama that they were scared and they were crying. It's way fewer and far between that we've all noticed, because you never see Team Red getting out there blocking streets or blocking the entrance to DFW Airport or Love Field Airport, or hassling the cops. And I mean, that's what made January 6th such an extraordinary event, is that's the closest thing we've ever seen to a right-wing riot. But dumpsters never catch on fire. Teslas didn't catch on fire when Elon was a Democrat. So it can happen, but it's not at the same magnitude or size. It's not as big of a problem as the left-wing Trump derangement syndrome. And it should just be called political derangement syndrome. All right, that's all my time. I'm James Parker. This has been The James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.